You said a lot of people approached you to partner because you had an audience, and you said no to 95% of everything. But then you said yes to things that were right for your audience and not just right for your wallet, but it turned out to be right for both. And so my question is, further breaking that down, how did you identify those people to partner with, or those companies?
That's interesting. Um, yeah. So again, after my epiphany in 2005, where I realized I was a terrible manager and a great marketer, I said, I'm never doing that again. I'm going to do what I'm good at. And that's how I started Copyblogger, and I built the audience. And then company after company after company, I partnered with people to do what I wasn't good at or couldn't do, like code, right?
Mhm.
So my first partner was Tony Clark. He was a designer and a coder. We created an online course together. He built the site. This was before it was just off the shelf to build one of those things. And he became my COO as we grew into the larger company, because he's Mr. Systems and Processes. And I was like, good, because I'm terrible at that. It's funny because of him, I have such a better appreciation of it. I can do a lot more by myself with my new companies than I would have done 15 years ago. And that's just the grace of learning from others, letting them do what they're good at, but watching, paying attention, appreciating what they do. And then, the next company, we created a WordPress product. I was like the use case as a non-technical content creator, but I didn't do the coding, obviously, because I can't do that. And then once we got into the SaaS level, obviously that was way beyond me. But I chose my partners based on two things. All of them came from the audience itself, right? They all reached out to me because they found that the principles that I talked about on Copyblogger resonated with them. And then they said, here's what we can do to create a product for those people. For example, the first SaaS was something called Scribe, which started out as like SEO copywriting SaaS, kind of evolved into a patented content marketing SaaS. It was fantastic. Sean Jackson came to me, met me at a conference, and said, I built this software or designed this software based on your principles that you have stated on SEO copywriting on the blog. And I'm like, you got my attention. I mean, how much more perfect can you get, right? Software that incorporates your philosophy and tactics and everything into it. And that's exactly how that partnership, that's a good example. Sonia Simone became my chief content officer. She was one of the first people to buy the course we put out in 2007. She said, she was one of those people who's like, just take my money, right? She's sitting there refreshing the page, like, your best fan, but she's a brilliant writer. And really, she just needed a platform. I recognized how good she was. What she needed was just a little more confidence, and she got it by writing for the Copyblogger audience and helping grow to the next level from there. Already talked about Tony. Brian Gardner came in as the founder of Studio Press. An earlier partnership I had kind of fell apart because my partner was about your age and he made a ton of money and it kind of went to his head. I'll leave it at that. But Gardner came out with what I thought was a better product, more in line with what my philosophy. And he's a great guy. And I said, okay, Brian, if you join us, I will double Studio Press sales in a year. And we did it in 6 months, right? And then Studio Press went on to do, I don't know, 7 times that amount by the time we sold to WP Engine. So it's a combination of, is it the right product with the right philosophical and ethical framework behind it, if you will? I know that sounds kind of woo-woo, but it's important. And then it just comes down to, do I like this person? Can I work with this person? And, once we ended up with that partnership that got to 8 figures, I mean, we always seem to agree ultimately, unanimously on everything, no matter how much we fought and kicked and screamed. Getting to that point, we're just like a family, and it worked. But just like families, you don't always agree. So you have to have someone you respect, right? If you don't have respect for someone, you can't have those disagreements and then end up at a point where you're on the same page. So partnering is, to me, it's been a key to the past success. And with Tim and Jared today, the only project I don't have a partner on is Further, and that's probably going to stay that way just because that's my baby.
Yeah.
As you clued into it early in this conversation, that was your catalyst there for this phase of your life. So it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to keep this. And then Copyblogger and Unemployable, I've got partners in who help me do more than I could ever do by myself.
It sounds like that there's a term going on these days called a permissionless apprenticeship. And I think Jack Butcher is the one who created this term, or he passes it along a lot. And it's like, if you want to work with someone who you admire, just do the work and then show it to them and say, hey, this is what I did. Check this out. And it sounds like that happened a lot in your partnerships. And that's how people approached you with all these different opportunities was, look, I built this, or look, I'm a fan of your work already and I'm willing to do this. I bought your course. I did this and I found value in it. And so that's incredible that has been working since 2006 or 2007 and probably will forever.
Yeah, it's interesting because one way to attract partners is to have the audience. And that's obviously been a blessing for me. But all of those people didn't have audiences. They had talent and they had ideas, but more what you just pointed out, they had initiative. Like, Sonia said she had to drink a glass of wine before she asked to guest post for Copyblogger. And I'm like, of course you can, and she's like, why did I stress about that?
Yep.
Sean did all that work architecting that software. No one told him it was going to work. I could have just blown him off, but he did it right. He did the software right, but he also had the approach that said, I built this because I think you're right about the way SEO works, as Google continues to get more sophisticated. So yeah, I think you're right. There's two ways. There's always ways. It's just the person who does and doesn't second guess themselves. It can be difficult because I will roll things around in my head relentlessly before I'll commit to doing them. But once I commit, I just do it. I get frustrated with people who do that and then they second guess themselves once they've started. I'm like, you don't know. You don't know yet. Quit. Quit second guessing yourself and do it to a point where you can evaluate whether you're on the right path or you need to pivot or you need to give up. There's no shame in quitting if you're on the wrong path. It's stupid to keep going if you're on the wrong path, but you have to go far enough to know that. You have to go far enough into the forest to know you're lost before you turn around.